We're discussing India's publishing industry and its prospects here on Mad About Markets. 100,000 crore opportunity. Let's weigh the pros and cons. What do we call it?
The yays and the mays, and as always, Mangalam loves going with the yays.
I love going with the yays, the eternal optimist. So let's talk about the big, boost coming in, which is the National Education Policy, which aims to increase the pre-K, K-12, basically school gross enrollment rate to 100% by 2030. So more kids going to school, more demand for books. Yay for the industry.
But could you imagine that almost a fourth of the industry is dealing with a huge issue, and that is piracy, because pirated books, they account for 20 to 25% of the total.
Well, can't argue against piracy being a big may, but talking about not just the National Education Policy, we also have the Right to Education Act and a lot of other initiatives taken by both state, central governments and a lot of organizations to increase the demand for quality educational content and thus publishing.
You spoke about education, right? But in the last few years, the hybrid education model has emerged, which has reduced the demand for published books, and that's a negative for the industry.
Reduced the demand just by a bit. But what's also happened in the last few years is that people are buying books to take pictures of those books and post it on Instagram. Bookstagram, Current Read, all those hashtags are making reading trendy again. Whether they read or not is the big question.
Well, that's the problem, right? They're posting more about it and reading less because there's so much distraction these days. And OTT platforms, your Amazon, your Netflix, the content on your phone, there's more time spent watching that than reading books on your, Kindle or otherwise.
But you know what has also happened is all these authors have become celebrated authors. They become celebrities in their own right. Globally, we've had J.K. Rowling, etc. Here as well, the inflection point was Chetan Bhagat writing first, and then you had Amish Tripathi, Ashwin Sanghi, all these guys. Their book launches have become a spectacle, and people really look forward to these.
They do, and that is an incentive for the authors and the industry, but the dominance of e-readers, because more people are choosing e-books, that makes reading on the go easier, yes, but not so good for the industry.
Not so good for the printing industry. Maybe a couple of these book companies may earn a little from the digital penetration, but not only are authors becoming celebrities, celebrities are also becoming authors.
True.
So we have a lot of people who are celebrated commissioning books, and why just people? We have corporations also wanting to tell their story to the world. So that's a yay for the industry.
But these authors or celebrity authors or whatever you call them, they're also dealing with ineffective copyright protection issues, which is a huge negative that they have to deal with.
They have to deal with that along with the complex book distribution system in India. But there are emerging multiple channels, because we do see people selling the books online. We see people selling it via various options that we just spoke about. But importantly, a lot of them are also self-publishing.
But every time we speak about the opportunity in a country like India that is so big and diverse, the rules change every few states, because private publishers face significant competition from state publishing housing because of varying rules across the country, which inhibits the industry from operating like a free market.
Yes, but what the free market also benefits from are economies of scale and the technological advances. Now people can print just on demand per book. So these have made printing industries or publishing industries a lot more efficient.
I take your point, but another major issue across the distribution chain is the longer payment receivable cycle, especially for academic content, where in India it is 4 to 9 months of a cycle and far higher than the other countries. And of course, lastly, we do have the cost of paper that we spoke about at the beginning. 60% of the total cost of publishing is paper alone. That kind of cost is difficult to sustain.
That's true.
So we've spoken about some of the negatives for the industry, but Ashwin, let me come to you on what you think are the key challenges, especially when we talk about copyright infringement and piracy issues.
The way that copyright, the way that the registration process works, that in itself needs to undergo a change, in the sense that we need to bring our institutions, including the Copyright Office, into the 21st century in terms of the time it takes for registration of copyright, number one. Number two is the enforcement of copyrights. Now, obviously, one of the huge challenges in the world of books is the fact that there is a 25% piracy. In fact, probably I'm being generous when I say it's 25%. It could be more. So that is a very, very big challenge, and it's very difficult to enforce it, because very often the pirators keep changing. So it's by the time you've brought out taken legal action against one and shut one down, another 10 have popped up. That is one. The second part of it is in terms of copyright violations, in terms of your content. And that is where, again, our legal system, unfortunately, tends to really play havoc with us. because according to me, we should not be leaving the enforcement of copyright purely to the commercial courts. We should be having a separate tribunal in terms of copyrights, which is specialized to be able to deal with such disputes.
Well, that's quite a suggestion, a separate court for copyright infringement laws, etc. Let's see how that comes about. But, Anand, the bigger question here is, how do you compete for a reader's time when there are so many other forms of content consumption? I mean, there's everyone watching a lot of content on their OTTs, etc., the phones, the TVs. Where do books find their space?
Has OTT been a distraction? Yes, everywhere in the world, especially here as well. Now you don't see as many people on a plane with the book. Everybody's downloaded something to watch. And most conversations are about what are you watching. But I'll give you a good example. There are many OTT which has driven sales up for physical books. So Lord of the Rings, which is a HarperCollins series, and Game of Thrones, also a HarperCollins series. Both we've seen that people are watching the show, but also driving up purchase of the print books. But it's a good thing in that eventually we all love stories. OTT platforms have fantastic storytelling. And I think the reader will also know that fiction, obviously, that's one of the reasons there's a big consumption of fiction. People will come back to buy. But it is true that we need to catch our kids young. I can think of Harry Potter as one of that inflection points where a 10-year-old Harry Potter reader would now be 25. So I think you need those points in which you are able to make a big shift from a non-reader to reader. And India is a big market of reluctant readers. So is that distraction? Yes. But should we be catching kids younger and putting a book into their hand as early as possible, making future readers to hit that big number of potentially being from the third largest to the world's largest book buying community? We can. They all help each other, is what I'm saying.
Well, who would have thought OTT would drive people to go back and read those books and catch them young, like they always say, right? But on that note, we'll come to the bigger question to all of you, which is, what really is the tale of India's publishing industry? Anand, you go first, and then we'll have Rajesh tell us what he thinks.
Especially in a country where English is almost first language, and we have the benefit and advantage of over 25 languages in which books are published. If a series of things happened, which is government libraries, government purchase, vibrant schools, more bookstores, I think we need 5,000 bookstores. We have 500. And online penetration the way it is, and adoption of digital, both and audio, we can be the world's largest book market. We are now number 3, and I'm very confident that we will be over the next 10 years.
See, as I mentioned, the publishing industry is in for, exciting times ahead, and will continue growing in double digit for sure in the coming years as well. With paper and print, inflation at unprecedented levels, the absolute growth in the industry will also be very high, given that most of the publishers will be looking at significant price increase in the coming years. The growth rate will also be fueled by the inclusion of pre-primary schools in the overall new curriculum structure as per NEP, because they'll be now open to using I would say excellent print quality and resources from all the leading publishing houses. If you ask me from a growth perspective, I'd see, as I mentioned, things are going to be very interesting and exciting going forward.
Rajesh, thank you so much. Anand, you too. We hope that we become the largest book market in the world by 2030. Ashwin, Vikrant, thank you for taking the time out. With that, we wrap up on this edition of Mad About Markets. You keep watching the show, but also keep reading.